The statutes require that the public hearing to consider a moratorium extension be held between 15 and 30 days before the last day of the current moratorium expiration, and that meeting needs 10 days prior notice in the newspaper of record for that township. So because the townships initiated their moratoria in a rolling fashion last summer, that means that each meeting basically has to occur 1 week after each other for each township. For example, Sundal's needs to be held before next Wednesday, the 10th, which is when their meeting is. Spring Creek, should they choose, or I'm sorry, Strand, should it choose to have a special hearing on a moratorium extension, would have to have the meeting between June 10th and June 25th with 10 days prior notice. Spring Creek needs to have its meeting between June 17th and July 2nd with 10 days prior notice. And then Walk-On came on board in August. Their renewal hearing, if they choose to have it, should occur between July 23rd and July 28th, also with 10 days prior notice in their local newspaper. So those are the guidelines that are set up by the state of Minnesota that determine when the actual hearings have to take place. The actual ordinance, especially in this case regarding the extension of the moratorium, it would seem to me that the language for that ordinance would be pretty universal across all of the townships, because they would each want to have the same amount of extension to happen so that these meetings could continue and the sharing structure could continue until ordinances are actually drafted. So I think that once that Sundal has its ordinance in final form, which that attorney should be handling really soon, then that information could be disseminated to the other townships with the dates that they need to have theirs handled, and they could take it from there.
The moratorium.
The moratorium extension ordinance, that's pretty much boilerplate.
So Scott, Sundal's right on track right now with the 10th, right, for next week. They've done their advertisement in the paper. Okay, good, good. Yeah, boy, you really got to stay on top of that. If you get an ordinance and you do a conditional use, that same kind of statutes apply to mailing out to your residents prior to the meeting. So I'll help you with that too. That's all you got to, boy, you got to stay on top of that. You got to get it in Mary Jo's paper and the index, and I tell you, I question too, because I've got this coming up with the floodplain ordinance. I have to cover the entire county of Norman. So I'm not going to write everybody a letter. So I don't know, I've got to check the legalities of sending out a notice to the entire county. You guys would have to send out a notice to all your taxpayers within your township, right? And how's that done? Is it done by letter form to each, or? Yeah,
well, it would depend on the individual case. In the case of a permit, sometimes the permitting process, as I understand it, depending on the facility that is being proposed, it may only be the residents within an immediate radius of that facility.
I meant your moratorium or the ordinance. If you, let's talk the moratorium first.
The moratorium extension, the requirement for that is that notice of the public hearing needs to be published at least 10 days prior in the newspaper of official record of that township.
You just don't have to send letters out to everybody.
No, no.
What about the ordinance though?
The ordinance itself, the same conditions apply.
Put it in the paper and then that's their official notice.
Yes.
Each, okay, good.
Yes.
I'm hoping that's the way it is for the floodplain ordinance. I'm not going to sit around and write 8,000 letters.
Yeah. Oh, there are two other caveats there that you might want to check on. In the case of feedlot-related ordinances, if townships consider those, also the Commissioner of Agriculture of the state of Minnesota needs to be notified in advance, and someone at the Pollution Control Agency needs to be informed. We, the townships here, usually inform one of the officers of the MPCA in Detroit Lakes, who is the regional manager for the feedlot program.
And because of the sensitive issue of it, you probably want to get a notice to the Department of Natural Resources.
It is not required. They are kept in the loop, I believe, but the only requirements are Commissioner of Ag and the MPCA.
Scott, thank you. You took care of the moratorium dates. I appreciate that. Any new business you'd like to bring up or address at this time?
I got a couple of questions. Gary, at your meetings and stuff, has the county talked about what the tax base on that is going to be, that where it's going to benefit anybody in the county?
They've never talked monies on it.
Well, take a look into the factor that, have they done any study, who's gonna work in these buildings? Our welfare people aren't gonna go to work there. And what you'll end up with is migrants. And who's gonna furnish the housing, pay the housing? Is the county gonna be stuck with HUD and subsidize all these people? And
They haven't had those discussions.
well, about time they probably do. What do you think?
That's really not a matter of mine. That's the county board members who talk about that if they want, if they choose to. You guys are the ones that had them in the office. You should have that conversation with them.
I talked to Ryan and all the employees that they had there, all but I think 2 were from Iowa. They brought them up. There's only 2 people from Las Vegas.
But again, like, put the invitation out to Randy to come to one of these meetings. They could do it, like,
Well, he said he was kind of hog-tied with that. He walked in up there. Huh?
he's hog-tied already.
Well, they subpoenaed him and he doesn't want them, you know.
You know what we're laughing at, hog-tied.
Well, just figure of speech,
Sure, I know.
not being biased or anything. But I'll call him. I got his phone number if you need it.
Randy, who's the commissioner out of town? Not that one.
But I will call him.
No, I have nothing new to report to you because again, you know, it's been really quiet on that end. I don't know how to even state it to you on what's going on. It just seems to me like it's just a wait and see attitude. I don't know, Protein Sources has been at your table. Not here tonight, but I mean, he was here 2 months ago when I was here. And my last one too. So that tells me there's still an interest, but there's just, you know, there's no movement. And I'll be the, you'll be the first, and this group will be the first along with the county, you know, and there's some movement. Yeah.
Anybody else?
I guess we'll just have to extend that moratorium, I suppose, these ordinances are gonna have to be more worked on, I suppose. You know, setback line isn't anywhere close to them to be, we can do anything with here.
It all depends on what's the right fit for each township, I
one you put out here a while back, then that's, it's all legal, or is, you know, I mean, and you said it was a rough draft?
That was a rough draft, but,
Yeah.
just to show that,
What, the nickel one?
It's for setbacks.
I wasn't. I gave you that one from
Yeah.
that was not a ranch legal or anything, that was just a rough draft.
Was it taken out of something, or what? Different ordinance, or
No, Nicholas is.
somebody else's ordinance?
Nicholas is.
It was Norman County, ordinance, basically, and then it was, how the Norman County ordinance applied to the municipalities. What the rules are the same as the residents of the same municipality.
So, that one I gave you, that is Nicholas.
Yeah. I see. Okay, well, take some more work on that, didn't it? Yeah, I was figuring on, we're gonna schedule ours here pretty quick, probably have the paper next week, and then, about 24th, I'm guessing. Get worked out.
Scott and the hospital can pay out, so.
Yeah, like I say, it's, we get it next week's paper, and it'll be the week after that, and then it'll be the week after that.
I think you've been satisfying all the legal obligations of a moratorium because you're continually moving forward on something. That's what they wanna see. They don't want to see us stalled and doing nothing. So you, every month you're doing something.
I did have one other question. In reading the initial proposal that was initially proposed from Protein Source back in April of 2014, it talked about that the proposal would be 2 facilities at that time. That's expanded, is that not correct? That's why there's so many more townships involved, because there's a plan for more than 2?
It actually, it started with, was it Sundal? The proposed.
They were gonna put in 2 right away.
2 buildings?
Two
Yeah,
sites.
Or some Sundall
One
and Strand right
Sundal
away.
and one Strand.
Yeah.
And then it went to, and then that one kind of went away. And then it went to.
But they chose locations that were right at the edge of each township, that were in the corner of each township, I'm sure, so that there would be, I'm sure there must have been a reason for it, but those are the locations they chose.
The only question that I had is that it talks about that the facilities would house 2,500 sows. And then they talked about that there would be 2 or 6 gallons of water per pig, or 8,000 gallons of water a day. This is also an agricultural farm area that hasn't utilized irrigation to a large degree. Are there issues in terms of just the water table being able to address that amount of water usage?
Yeah, the DNR shut 2 of them irrigation systems he has, he used to work for T. He was complaining because the DNR wouldn't let him use it. 2 that he set up, it cost $250,000 apiece.
So-
Now he's taking the 1 down. So
So-
whether he's moving it to another one, I don't know.
So I'm just wondering if that's another, if that's another concern that's been looked at, is, it's the water table here, with having had many droughty years. Is that something that needs to also be addressed?
The watershed district did state in their minutes from spring of 14, that they recognize we do have a very large watershed. However, it is very slow to fill. And so that is a concern. However, we've discussed quite a bit what the drain would be on the watershed itself. And there was I'm bad with names, forgive me, but there was a gentleman from the DNR, a new employee, who discussed that the DNR would be the entity that would decide whether it's feasible to do that. But I believe 10 million gallons a year is does that sound familiar? to you?
Sounds familiar,
About
yes.
10 million gallons per
Permitted.
year is where they get concerned. If it's over that, then the DNR will
gets involved because they need that number on their records.
DNR is if it's over so many gallons per day.
Then will. So I would guess the DNR would probably permit, or have to permit, so it's really their call. And if they feel uncomfortable with that aquifer down there, they have the ability not to write that permit. I'm thinking that in all the years I've worked with soils, you get over in Lakes Country, it's sandy, so water permeates fast. So those aquifers get in a little trouble. Over here with that clay soil, over the millions of years that water's been going down there and maybe storing up, I get concerned when I see irrigators start taking it out. But where there hasn't been any irrigation, there's probably a pretty good surplus down there, wet or drought years. It's down there quite far. You know, we're talking deep wells down 150 to 300 feet for home usage. So, but it is something that should be on the radar. When you put a well and you have that much water coming out of a facility. But
This
again,
shows it'd be about 3 million gallons per facility.
per year,
Yeah, per year.
so that's a question mark you need to have down in your notes.
We had a sand point that was at 29 feet, and it'd been there since, way back in the early 1900s. That went dry 4 years ago, and we had to come in and re-drill, and that would go down to 64 and a half.
You know, there's the problem with clay soils. Once you cap that water out of there, oh, it's sandy over here.
Yeah, all sand.
There's no clay, there's clay down there eventually. Well, you're the shores of Lake Agassiz, aren't you? But below that sand, I'll tell you, there's clay down there a ways. There has to be.
There wasn't no gold.
No, there's no gold or oil.
20 years ago, there was a irrigation well half a mile west of Gary that got shut down.
Won't run out of water.
Ran wells, right?
Oh, man,
When
draw
that-
down, yeah.
When the mill took and burned down the Nada, they called us and told us not to use water. And we're, what, damn near 30 miles away?
I know some of the committee members, I myself, we had looked into studies of a lot of the manure and waste products, you know, filtering back into the soil and ultimately into the water source. And it has been a huge concern, especially for the type of area that we do live in. So we are doing the research, and we do have.
Yeah, it's,
And they're having a lot of problems with that now in southern Minnesota, after they experienced how many years of large factory farms.
Right.
it's interesting because my job in the summertime is to write permits and inspect for septic. So septic, human waste, underground or in mound systems, most of them are underground, but it's treated in that soil. But when you have, like on farmland, manure spread on topsoil, there's a lot of other factors that can come into play that you don't see in your private septic systems, because they're contained and they're treated. Whereas on top, depending on how they apply that manure on top of there, you get a heavy rain like we have been getting, you start talking about some tiling systems. Not that I'm saying that tiling systems would do that, but I've seen an increase in tiling lately, but it seems to be prevalent throughout the Midwest for some reason. I just see a different kind of treatment in the way we treat sewage, our own human sewage versus agricultural. So they're knifing it in, but is that the same treatment as human? Not the way we're treating, because we've done enough studies on, that we're doing it the right way. Finally.
Any other questions?
Getting back to his manure treatment now. When they pump it out, do they stir the pit and bring that out, not with the water? just say 6 weeks prior to that, all this sewage is coming into this same tank, and when they decide to pump it out, there's an awful lot of untreated stuff that's gonna be taken off the top.
Definitely a concern. I mean, it's been difficult. It depends, from what I understand, it depends on the type of operation and the manure applications that they have between, it's totally different from a turkey farm to a pig farm to a cow. It's all handled a little bit differently, and to get an answer from, you know, one to another, it gets kind of gray and blurred a little bit. You know, you'll ask one person, oh, that's no problem. You'll ask another person, well, we've got this or that. So I know it is a huge concern.
It's a lot of gallons.
It's huge.
It's not being anything done to it.
They'll give it to you free. Yeah. So it's a huge concern. And once again, this is a great. I love this. I love this little article that has pictures instead of having to do that. It's your quick glance to see where they're having problems with this waste disposal issue, where you can look at it to where, you know, red is bad, and you don't want to see red. You start.
Once you get it there,
it's there.
it's there.
It's there, and it's once you apply this manure to certain stuff, you can't grow crops.
Where's Norman County?
They're gonna have to try
Is he in the red there, Chris? On the backside.
farming this country.
One of them.
Yeah, be red or what?
I think we're looking, trying to find one. I think we're looking.
Are we?
He's got one right next to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's just we gotta be red on the edge of red or white.
Yeah,
Hoping white, huh?
I'm hoping white too.
Oh, that's to be assessed, so that hasn't been
Yeah.
done yet, but the red's not looking good there.
This is the program where I was talking about from the sewer watershed
Yes.
district. Norman County is not slated to be assessed for a couple more years, if that's the program.
So then we're the white, I'm sure.
But if you look at the boundaries, if it's red on either side of us,
Yeah.
I know where I put my money if I were big.
Yeah.
Look at reports, regardless of when or how the pollution started, I know the sewer basin, as we talked before, it has been many, many years trying to fix the problem
Yeah.
of pollution, and it's gonna take many more years
Boy.
to fix it. So, yeah, once you get it in there.
There's a lot of moving parts when you're in an agricultural county, because there's not just everything that's applied agriculturally, there's your individual septic systems, we're along a river, so our cities below us, you know, they treat their sewage when it's at acceptable levels, the water's coming into the Red River.
Well, that's another issue as well, because if we have contamination from factory farms flowing into our streams and rivers and flowing up to Canada, Canada's not gonna be happy. And I know, is it in Iowa, there are people that are upstream or downstream from a factory farm, and they are suing upstream people? Is that on whatever handout?
Yep, that's one of the
Yes, there's a handout on, a suit has been filed by the Water Department of the city of Des Moines, Iowa, against 3 of the upstream counties, charging them with failing to properly account for the effluents that are being leached across their county soils and entering their waterway, leading to increased filtration costs being borne by the city of Des Moines. So that's something that is being looked at in Iowa, and also I believe there's another case similar in the state of Washington, where communities are being taken to task for not being good stewards of their waterways on behalf of residents who live in jurisdictions downstream from them.
We shouldn't always get caught up with the fact that we're just, you know, tunnel vision's just the waterways. Up here, we're a big watershed. So-
It goes in every direction.
Anybody that's within our watershed, everything you do in that watershed affects those waterways, including us, including our treatment of sewage. I know that we're continually looking at our cities in Norman County right now, including the one we're in, about their sewage systems. And are they, up to code, are they on their own, do they have their own sewer municipal plants? And we found towns, not necessarily in Norman County, but neighboring counties where half the town's on a municipal, the other half's on their own, and they should be all on the municipal. And the PCA's making an effort to get them all online. And get out in the country, you've got the country sewers. And then you get the agricultural practice, so I say, there's so many moving parts here that don't ever forget the Wild Rice watershed, and I forget there's a few other watersheds, I think, in Norman County. Wild Rice is the big one.
Sand Hill.
Yep. Everything we do affects that. And nature. Nature comes into play. But, moving parts. We can only do our best to keep it clean.
Well, for next meeting, assignments, agenda items, as our meeting in Sundahl starts to go, I'm sure we'll be able to update folks on the outcome, hopefully give them a debrief, give you guys a debrief on the outcome of that meeting for sure. Next meeting is July 1st, I believe. I just took a peek at it. So we'll get together and catch up at that point.
Were you changing the time at all from 7:30 to 6? Somebody had mentioned.
Sundahl is 8 o'clock.
That we're talking, this
No,
is
this one.
Oh, this
next
meeting.
This one here. But I know somebody said during the summer we may bump it.
No, it's always been 7:30, we haven't.
You never bumped it to 6:30? Okay.
I just throw us all off.
So it was showing at 6:30.
I was hoping to throw you off.
6:30.
Anybody else hoping with me?
All right, well, if there's no further items, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting for tonight. And you guys have a perfect next few weeks. I'm glad everybody came out. Thank you.